Hello and welcome to Twerk, a space where you can hear and read about some amazing people, the fantastic jobs they do, and the paths that led them to where they are today. This is break room number 7, I think. If it's not, I'll dub that over and change it to be something else.
It's break room something.
Break room number 7. So I have asked Nick to sit down with me today because I've worked with Nick in the past and he's fab. And he's great, and he has a great voice. If nothing else, you have such a great voice for podcasting.
I'm going to get embarrassed
Which is
now.
what you do podcasts. But what Nick is doing right now and has been doing for a number of years, well, I will let him introduce that, but I think it's quite poignant to a lot of the chats I have. So, very quickly, do you want to just, because I do want to track back as well, tell people what you do?
Okay, I'll try and keep this simple. I'm still caught back on the great voice thing. It's funny, I do get...
You sound like... Do you know who you sound like? And I know I've not actually spoken to you in a while. Hugh Jackman. I mean, you must get that all the time.
Do you know what? I love you even more now.
Oh my God.
He's like my superhero.
You are Hugh Jackman.
I do love him. No, and I do get people say about my voice. I think thing is...
You've never lost your Aussie twang, though.
Well,
You've been here forever.
20 years. Yeah, so I think it's the blend between being Australian, which I sound very Australian now, living in the UK for 20 years and also working in the US.
Yes.
So I kind of got this weird mix.
That's why it's Huey. It's Huey.
Bit of 3 things going on. So what do I do? So probably the simplest way of explaining it is business growth and scale for entrepreneurs at all different stages. But I tend to focus on businesses once they get established and start to kind of grow them in a more precise way, build value in those companies. And a lot of the people that I work with are kind of looking to exit those companies and create what we call a capital event in the future. So they're trying to build something that can be sold to a private equity firm or to another company, usually for tens of millions of dollars or more.
Yeah.
That said, the foundations to get there, which I'm sure we'll talk about today, around how do you kind of create something from scratch, what does that look like? All of those things are fundamental pieces, the foundations, as I call it, towards getting to that outcome.
Yeah.
So these days I'll work with people who have got quite sizable lifestyle businesses, and we can unpack that. But I'll also work with what we call growth businesses, which are usually ones that have some form of investment behind them, and they're building up to this big sale, this big exit at some point in the future. And they tend to be the 2 different pathways, and they're very personal decisions depending on the founder and what they're trying to achieve. My background for a long time was private equity. So I spent over a decade in private equity. And for people who don't know that world, it's where you have a firm who have various partners in them who raise money from usually high net worth individuals or institutions, and they go and buy companies. And they buy those companies with the intention of improving them, scaling them, growing them, to sell them in the future, usually anywhere between 3 and 7 years later, for a significantly larger amount than what they paid for them.
Yeah.
But what sits underneath that is you have to understand, as I mentioned, really good business fundamentals. You have to understand about leadership. You have to understand about what is a good business decision versus what is a bad one.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to turn things around and pivot. So there's all these different parts of the playbook that are applicable. But what I do now, from learning that for 10 years in private equity and obviously the stuff that we met before that, I now teach, coach, mentor those same skills to business owners who are looking to kind of create something. The whole idea is, what kind of gets me excited is the concept of helping entrepreneurs create a level of freedom for themselves. I call it freedom and financial independence, right? Yeah. So if you have a degree of freedom, whatever that means to you, and you have financial independence, whatever that means to you, then you have the option to do lots of cool things with your life, whatever that is for you, right? Yeah. So I position myself as doing that for people ultimately in different ways, and I really get excited about that because that's kind of what I want.
Yeah.
Right? So what I'm helping people do is what I've done.
Yeah.
And I'm still on a journey. I'm not 100% there, but I've got to a point where I've got a certain amount of both of those things. You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're starting out, my advice is always be clear about the thing that you could do forever. And what's the thing that if you could make money from it, you would do it forever because you love it. Like, you're really connected with it.
Yeah, find it, yeah.
But it's, and then the question is, well, how do you find that? Well, I found it by putting myself in different rooms and talking to people and going to different events and stuff like that. I had an idea, but I didn't know exactly what. And then I started talking to more people and it got more formed.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the top line. But from the commercial aspect of it, I often then say build the bottom up based on what you need, right? And it's funny actually, when people really look at what they need versus what they think they need to live, like on a monetary standpoint, there's usually a bit of a difference. Like, I actually spend less money now, even though I earn more money than I did when I was in corporate, because I don't really need to do as much. And that's not because I'm not traveling or whatever. It's just I don't feel like I need to spend money on stuff.
You're happier in general. So you're not feeling the need to buy happiness.
I buy running shoes like every week, but that's because I still haven't lost that addiction. But but I don't feel like I have to go and do crazy stuff anymore.
To make yourself happy.
So if you look at it like that, and what I often say to businesses when they're starting, or people when they're starting, is you would have had a salary, okay, and don't think of that as an annual salary. So lose the annual salary thing altogether and look at it as a month.
Yeah.
Okay, and it breaks it down differently. So let's say you're in a really good job and you're making £120,000, per year, good salary, right? Sort of, reasonably good mid-level senior salary.
Yeah.
Right? That's 10K a month. Now, obviously you've got the tax piece in that and all that sort of stuff. But remember, you're still getting taxed even if you're employed. So if you're on 120K, you're getting whatever it is, 40% taken off.
Yeah.
When you start your own business, you do have, and depending on where you're listening to this, you do have different advantages of doing that. So actually you're going to have, depending on how much you spend, you've got some options. So then the challenge becomes, well, how do I make 10K a month?
Yeah.
Right? And then if you break that down, then it becomes easier, in my opinion, to look at the economics of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, it depends if it's a service business or a product business and all that, but it's not hard, particularly in a service-based business. Let's say you're doing marketing consultancy or you're doing something like that, or an agency model or whatever. It's not hard to go out there and build a business, a lifestyle business at this rate, to pay you that sort of level.
Yeah. Okay, so find something you like doing, commit to it. At what point then, obviously, work out an amount of money and figure out how you can earn that amount of money. Although you also simultaneously said money, obviously, you shouldn't make that the be all and end all of it though.
Well, yeah, you've got to have it as a byproduct of it. I think my point...
You've surely got to know how much you need to earn. And then, like I said at the very, very start, it's having that idea that even if you're saying you're really passionate about and I really want to do it, but I also know I need to earn this money. It's then how do you then correlate the two of those things?
There's I'm going to get this wrong, but there's have you seen that Japanese Venn diagram? It's called Isagi or something like that. You have to add it to the show notes.
Right.
But it's this thing which talks about like what sits in the middle of your idea is the thing you care about.
Yeah.
Right? The thing that you're good at, I think it's this, and the thing that you can monetize. And what sits in the middle is the answer to those questions. Again, it's worth finding out if I've got that right, but it's the concept of that.
Yeah.
And so the idea is like, so what do I really care about, where there's a problem, right? What do I really care about? Can I solve that problem? Do I have the experience to do it? And can I make money from it? And that creates, I think, the answer to the question. So for me, it was like, what I care about? I care about entrepreneurs creating some level of freedom and financial independence.
Yeah.
How can I help them do that? Well, God, I've been doing this for 20 years, 30 years in business, and I've kind of worked in private equity. I've got all these skills that I've been using as an employee. What happens if I could transfer those skills to people who need them when they're in their kind of entrepreneurial journey? Yeah. Right? Can I make money from it? Well, how can I make money from it? Well, I could have an advisory firm. I could do consulting. I could do coaching. I could do mentoring. I could create some SaaS platform that does... there was lots of different things. But so I thought, well, actually, the question you've really got to ask on the money thing is, will people pay for you to solve the problem? Yeah. So forget about the business model at that point. Will someone pay? So if I'm advising an early stage business, and I'm going to go into this because I think it's relevant for this, is the first thing I often say to them is, who do you really want to help, right? Who do you really want to help, right? Okay.
That's
and why?
Your first question.
Yeah. Who do you want to help?
And do most people have the answer to that? Or is there other questions going? I guess there's
a series of questions.
That's quite a distinct question to ask, though, isn't it? It's like what you could ask. What is it you want to do? What problem you solve? Whatever it is. But you're very specifically saying
you can only answer the problem. You can look at this in two ways. You can really only answer the problem piece, which is the second question, if you know who you want to help. Right? If you go out there and say, I want to solve this problem, well, the problem has to exist for some entity. Yeah. Right? So, whether you start with the problem and the person or vice versa, they're the first two questions. Okay, so for me, it's like, who do I really care about? Right? Who do I really? Who's someone that I, if I use this test with clients. Would I invite that person around to have dinner with my family?
Ooh.
Who is that person? And remember back in our days of kind of media, and I remember this back in the FHM days and stuff like that. So we used to have those cardboard cutouts of the ideal person that the editorial teams were writing for. So I've never forgotten that. So I think, there's a person there that I really want to help, and they're probably in a bit of pain. They've started a business, they're stuck. Yeah. Everything they thought it was going to be for them, it's not.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, how can I help them, really realize the vision they had at the very beginning, because they started this for a reason. How can I help them realize that vision?
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, it's like that was my starting point, right? Who do I want to help? Really frustrated entrepreneurs, people who've kind of had this idea but they don't know what to do with it, right? What's the problem? They feel stuck. They feel in the cage. They feel like everything that they thought they wanted when they started this is not going to happen. So what do? They give up. So the reason that startups fail...
So reaching out to you before giving up, basically.
Well, this is the starting point of how I created the business. So I was clear on the person, on the person I wanted to help. I was clear on the problem that I wanted to solve. Okay? Then I started to work out what's the offer, right? So what's the thing that's going to bridge those 2 points, right? So they have this problem.
Yeah.
They have this outcome. What's the transformation that I'm going to provide?
Yeah.
And that's where the business model starts to come in.
Yes,
so this is the sequence,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
And then once you've got that, you now have to go and get them, right? So the marketing side, the bit where we'd say, how do I go and get leads or whatever it is for your business, that comes after all that. You can't do that beforehand.
Yeah.
And then, so I have this concept, which I use with some of my coaching clients, which is called the rule of ones. Okay, so, and this is probably the most, I suppose, profound piece of kind of when you're in startup mode.
Yeah.
Right, but you can use it even if you've got a business. So the rule of ones is kind of what we're going through. So one ideal person you want to help.
Yeah.
One problem that you're going to solve. One offer.
Yeah.
One traffic source. In other words, where are they?
Yes.
So that could be a social media platform. It could be an event. It could be whatever else. It could be through someone else's network.
Yeah.
Okay. One way of getting their data in exchange for value. So like a lead magnet.
Yeah.
Okay. One sales conversion process. In other words, how do I turn that lead into an actual customer or client?
Yeah. 1
year.
Right.
You do nothing else for 1 year.
Other than just those ones.
You can change, if things, the best way to do it.
Yeah.
You might try something, that idea of the offer might not be 100% right, or your pricing might be wrong. So you can change around the things.
Yeah.
Right? But you should commit long enough that you've given everything a chance.
Yeah.
What most people do is they create multiple products, multiple audiences. They want to solve all these problems for all these. There's no clarity through the direction. And then they always get stuck or they close things down. The people who get to really good businesses, and I help a lot of people get to sort of 7 figures of revenue and then on to 8 figures of revenue. So really good businesses. It's easier to get to 7 figures of revenue in a business, any business, if you focus on those ones, than it is to go out there and try multiple things. And it's the idea of, you've heard shiny object syndrome, entrepreneurs want to try all these things and they're all scattery and all that. But the reality is, if you go deeper into fewer things, you'll get the outcome quicker and you'll have more fun as well.
And you're talking about focus, really, aren't
you? I mean, if you look at my model right now, I have one thing, right? There are other things if people come in, but in terms of what I focus on, so I have one really clear person I'm trying to help. I know exactly how I help them, right? Yeah. I use LinkedIn. Yeah. I post every single day. I get a heap of impressions off that, okay? Yeah. I have one product I sell. It's a group mentoring membership. A couple of different tiers within that, but people join that per month. They come in, they get weekly calls with me. It's none of it's one-to-one, it's all group. Yeah. There's something like 40 odd businesses in there currently, right? So I serve them through that sort of process. And I have the way that I sell it, if you like, is people will reach out to me on LinkedIn because of various posts. We have what we call a sell by chat. I won't bore you with what this is, but we go backwards and forwards in the messages, the direct mails, and we find out if we can solve the problem. We send them a sheet explaining what the mentoring membership is about, and then from that sheet they sign up.
So it's really quite straightforward.
That's my core. So around the edges of that, people will want other advisory and things like that, and I'll do different things. But I don't market those things. They're kind of opportunistic.
Yeah.
The thing that I market is one lane.
Yeah.
And I've done that for years.
Yeah,
and that's what's driven growth. In the beginning, I tried to do 3 or 4 things. I was partnering with these people, and there's a new idea over there. And the results in the beginning weren't as strong because I couldn't put enough attention.
But you learned though, didn't you? I think the thing is, to get to where you are now, you had to go through all of that. And I think this is one of the trickiest things, isn't it? As an entrepreneur, like you say, you know, you make so many mistakes, and although they're not mistakes, and the biggest secret to learn is, but they feel, well, at the time, all of these things can feel like mistakes, and they can make you feel like you want to stop. You go, it's just not, well, this isn't well, I'm not. But you've just got to keep, like you say, if you I guess the thing for me, and I did this with, I think it was referenced with one of my things about imposter syndrome, is that if your belief is bigger than your fear, then you'll keep going. Do you know what I mean? If you really believe in what you're doing, then it will outweigh the fear of, well, I'm not doing it, or just the fear of doing it, and
well, you're always going to get positive and negative results, right? And as you said, like it's only a failure if you stop. Yeah. So I there's 2 things. People ask me about entrepreneurship all the time, and I say there's 2 parts to entrepreneurship. First part, it's a team sport. That doesn't mean your team. It just means you have to work with others around you, right? So there's no way that I would have done what I've done had I not had really good mentors myself. Some were good and some were not so good. But the point is, I learned every time. If I go back to those human needs, right? So I went through a couple of them with you. Certainty is one human need, but one of the other ones is also uncertainty. Right, so I'll go through the 6 because this will answer the question really well, right? So you've got certainty and uncertainty. Yeah. You've got significance. Yeah. You've got love and connection, right, as one, and then you've got growth and contribution. They're the 6 needs. Yeah. If someone has, and here's the thing, we all have all of them, but we have 2.
We have different weights.
Exactly. So if and a lot of people out there have a high need for uncertainty, or another way of saying that is variety. Yes. So if your number one human need is variety, which it is for a lot of the population, you'd be surprised how many people actually, like, they crave that. They're the ones who need to, they do more adventure sports. They do things that kind of excite them. They need excitement and change. Yeah. And if they don't have that, they get bored. So if someone's got that as their number one priority, the idea of staying in something for a long period of time is probably the worst thing in the world for them. So in order to stay somewhere from a career perspective, that role would have to evolve a lot over a number of years or whatever it is for that person to get what they need. Yeah. So that's an interesting way of thinking about that. Not everyone's like that. The other context is certainty, where someone, they will stay somewhere forever because the fear of change is bigger than everything else.
Maybe it's a bigger question about what we define as a career.
Career is the wrong, in my opinion, career is the wrong term. Yeah. So it's values. Yeah. Right? So if there's a guy who I've been mentored by called Dr. John DeMartini. Fascinating guy to listen to. He's got a podcast and everything, very deep stuff. And he talks about voids and values. Yeah. Okay. And so people, when you meet someone and you kind of don't get on with them or whatever else, and they do something to you and you go, well, how could that person do something like that to me? Right. Yeah. They haven't done anything wrong. Yeah. Right. What they've done is they've just tried to, the way he expresses it, they're trying to fill their voids the best way they can with what they value. And because you don't value the same thing as that person, you see it as a conflict. How could that person do that, right? Yeah. But actually, they don't see it like that. No. So if you think about career for a second,
which is a really.
It's interesting.
It's your truth versus someone else.
It's like integrity. Like so someone says, "Oh, you lack integrity." Well, I only lack integrity because what I've done conflicts with what you think should be done. Yeah. But why are you right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so if you think about career for a second, see, I think of it in terms of, like, everyone's got a set of values that they either have defined or they don't know, right? Yeah. So we have things that drive our decisions, okay? And the reason I left private equity is it started to misalign with my values, right? Otherwise I would have stayed. I just didn't believe that the things that we were doing in private equity were the right things to do. Now, you could argue there's another way of framing that, saying, well, we're creating jobs, we're creating value for societies and economies. Yeah. Right? There are hard decisions that need to be made, but there's a greater good. Like, that could be a reframing of it. The way I looked at it was, we're making all these people redundant for money. It doesn't feel right. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's wrong.
but it just wasn't right for you.
So now when I say to you, like, I could do this forever, it's because it aligns with my values.
Yeah.
But your values, my values, anyone that, gets involved in work, they're going to be different. So I think when you think about a career, it's not about necessarily a job, and it's not necessarily about staying at a company forever. It may not even be about staying in an industry forever.
Exactly.
But you have to be really clear at what serves you and gives you fulfillment.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I learned is that you've got these two concepts. It's called the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. So the concept behind that is the science of achievement. Anyone can achieve, right? Because if they put themselves in the right environment, they can achieve. But fulfillment's harder.
I know. It is. Okay, one of the questions I did want to ask.
Sure.
What do you think are the most common mistakes entrepreneurs make? In the early days, particularly.
I think we touched on some of this in terms of being unclear on their outcome and wanting to experiment and try things. I think it's good to experiment and try things around a goal.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're not clear on the goal, then you end up trying too many things, and then you become scattered and unclear about what you're trying to achieve. I see that actually with later stage businesses too. So one of the first things I always get people to do is a vision exercise. There's a really good book by a guy called Cameron Herold called Vivid Vision. And it's not like, you just write a paragraph down and that's your vision. It's like 6 pages. It's like you're creating what you want the future to be like 3 years from now. And it's 3 years. So not 10 years, not 1 year, it's 3 years from now. Because it gives you enough time to really build something of meaning. And it's everything from, how you employ people, what the marketing strategy is, how you serve your customers, the bigger difference you make in the world. It's very, very, very specific.
Yeah.
And I find that exercise at any stage helps give the clarity and the inspiration to then take the action. So if you're starting a business and you don't have that clarity, or you don't even have a go at creating that clarity, because remember, you may not know the answer, it forces you to be clearer.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Because if people go out there and they just try and build and build and build.
So basically, are you saying the biggest mistake people make is because they wing it too much?
Well, they don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
So there's a point where they're not, and because they don't know that, they're not clear enough on what they're trying to build. So winging it is part of it.
Because everyone's really winging it, aren't they?
I mean, you can. My personal belief is you can wing it in the middle, meaning, you don't know how you're going to get there. It's like the best way of saying this is like, I want to go to New York, right? There's multiple ways I can go to New York. I can fly, I can go on a boat, maybe I can swim, whatever, right? But the point is, you've got a destination.
Yeah.
How I'm going to get there is a choice. I could decide to, fly to Europe for 3 days and then go to New York. But there's lots of ways I can get to the destination, but I know the destination.
Yeah.
So the biggest issue I find is that people don't know the destination. So if they choose to wing it towards the destination, they try different things, they make mistakes, they make errors, that's all cool, right? Because that's the learning experience. But what most do is they do all these different things and they end up, I don't know, in Africa when they wanted to go to New York. It's like, hey dude, you said you didn't, the reason you're in Africa is because you didn't define New York, and now you're over here.
And you bumped into someone that was going to Africa, and then you've just gone
and you thought they were great, that was a great idea, so you thought, I'm not going to forget my other idea. So the thing, I'll give you the main things for me. The people, in the very beginning, the reason people kind of fail and therefore give up is because they're not clear on their outcome.
Yeah.
They haven't probably worked on their own mindset and their own personal development. So there's routines and habits we haven't even touched on here.
I know. Well, this is what the other thing I was going to say is, where do you rank self-honesty? Because a lot of people, it's like, are you being really honest? Because they might really want to do it, but it's like, is it really going to, I think a lot of people are in denial about whether something's going to work or not.
I believe you can do anything though. So,
okay.
So I'm of the, within reason of whatever else, of
providing
course.
You want it enough.
And you haven't got like a physical capability issue, right?
Yeah.
Like, if someone's going to, they haven't got, that their legs have been chopped off and they're going to do whatever else they can't do. But then again, you could argue that that's been proven wrong many a time. There's a guy I know at the moment who's climbing Everest and he has no use of his legs. So like, if someone can achieve that, then why can't you build a business?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm of the belief that you've got to create the right environment for you to succeed, and a lot of that is how you think about yourself. So the imposter syndrome. You've got to have habits and routines that banish any, it's called self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Right. So if you walk, it doesn't mean you're not going to have them, but you have to know how to get out of them when you have those doubts and those
Right.
fears. So the reason people fail, back to your question, other than not being clear, is they give up because it becomes too hard and they haven't anticipated that along the journey.
Yeah.
So it's the way I look at it is, it's not going to be easy. It is going to be difficult. But if you can anticipate as best you can that those things are going to happen, what can you do to yourself and what can you control that's going to allow that to be as an easier thing to navigate?
Yeah.
Right? And the people who have the most success, it's never just luck. I mean, luck happens to some extent once you put everything else into it.
Once you've got yourself in the right place.
But I do think a lot of people, they don't work on themselves enough to feel confident to stay the course. So the first big hurdle comes up, they get a rejection, right? And they give up.
Yeah.
And you look at that, and the famous ones, the Kentucky Fried Chicken guy. You know, was it 1,000 no's before he got the investment as a 6-year-old?
J.K. Rowling, she's another one, isn't she?
There's
What
heaps
was
of
it,
them.
40 publishing houses rejected her before she got
There's heaps of them like
Yeah.
that. But that's a great example.
road to success.
How
is
many
paved
people
with failure.
would have stopped after the 5th or 10th rejection?
Yeah.
Or, you know, I mean, everyone, right? Most people. So that's
I think
why.
the problem is that people turn around and say to you, well, then you've tried, it's not working. It's not working. And I think, but it is tricky though, isn't it? It's going, well, I know you're trying it. And it's where you get to the point of belief and honesty or whatever, because you can try certain things, but if it's just not working, it's not working. You need to stop because it's not working. Or do you, in your head, you don't ever stop?
I don't stop.
If you want it, you just got
Back
to keep
to my
going. No
success
matter how.
formula I said beforehand, you know, the third and fourth points were, you know, measure the results you're getting. So measure the feedback. So let's say you have got an idea and you're going out there and you're not getting much, you know, people are saying no a lot, right? You're going to get no's anyway. You're an idiot if you don't change things, right? But my point is that if you go out there, you've got a clear vision, you know what you're going to achieve. You've got a playbook, or you've got mentors, or you've got something you're going to model, right? Someone who's already done it. So that's going to increase your chances of success significantly. Then you go out and do the work, right? You get feedback, you measure, you find out, you know, what's working, what's not working, because there's always going to be a percentage of things that are working and a percentage that are not. Sometimes it might be more things aren't working in the beginning, but then you tweak it. Right? So eventually, imagine it's like an 80-20. You go out there, 20% of what you want to create is great, 80% is not, right? You've got it wrong in whatever way. You get feedback, you look at what's going on, you change, and then eventually 80% of it's right. You know, you're getting positive results back in whatever way you're measuring it.
Yeah.
Then you've done it. Then you just continue. Now that process, by the way, continues and iterates because like the markets change and whatever else. So you never get
So
there.
that percentage is always going to fluctuate.
You never get there. Like
Yeah.
the whole thing of the reason they call it an entrepreneurial journey is that, you know, you have points in the beginning where it feels more challenging, then you get kind of some momentum. Then like everything you're doing is never going to fail. Wow, I'm on fire. Then it drops to the ground, and so it is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But that's why I often say to people, if you choose to do this, you've got to get comfortable with the fact that it is going to be like that. That's why they say the journey is more important than the destination. Now, the destination might be that you build a company you can sell for millions one day, and wow, like that might have been your ultimate goal. But along that journey, it's going to be up and down, up and down, up and down. So you have to, the reason I say it's so important to work on yourself, and whatever that means is different for different people, we can get into it. But if you don't work on yourself through the roller coaster, at any point when it's at the bottom, you could leave and quit. Right? And you know that, have you ever heard of that saying being like it's 2 feet from gold? You ever heard about that?
No.
So it's a fantastic story around when everyone was rushing to California back in the gold rush.
Oh yeah, in the 1800s.
And apparently this happened more often than not. And people were digging. They'd dig for ages, for months. They'd give up, and then someone else would take over their plot of land. And literally within 2 feet of where they were digging was, you know, a massive piece of gold or an oil well or something else like that.
Yeah.
All right, so they were 2 feet from gold, right? 2 feet from their outcome, but they stopped. And most people, they don't realize how close they are to it. So that's why if you don't work on yourself, which is this kind of resilience and I'm not going to give up no matter what happens, I'm going to put myself into a state where anything is possible, right? And you have to train yourself. That doesn't just happen. You've got to train yourself, right? Do the reps every single day. That's how people stay the course.
Yeah.
I mean, I've studied this stuff a lot in my own journey, but and I've also watched it with people and seen people who've gone from this. One friend of mine, Kiala, he was 60 grand in credit card debt. His business did 60 million last year, and that's in 6 years.
Wow.
And he puts it all down to how he had to change and evolve himself and his mindset.
Yeah.
And what he believed was possible, and to believe what was possible. He still pinches himself now and goes, I can't believe this.
It's interesting, actually, because I think what I've seen, particularly from interviewing entrepreneurial women in the last year, and the fact that imposter syndrome is rife in women, I think, generally immature women or whatever, that is the biggest thing that probably stops a lot of women from doing it, is just kind of just not feeling good enough, not feeling capable enough, like just the self-doubt, everything in, and they might have the amount of, I think, women out there that have good ideas or want to do something great, but they stop themselves. They just can't do it because
the thing with everyone, but especially women who have been mums, and so let me frame it like this. And I used to say this on my podcasts, is that you can only scale a business to the level of your identity, right? And your identity is how you see yourself. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I might see you as one thing, but how you see yourself is personal to you. So if your identity is a mum, your identity is, a wife to someone, whatever. If your whole world is built around what happens, particularly, when you're at a certain age, when you're raising kids, and that happens to guys as well, but certainly mums, then you're not identifying yourself as an entrepreneur. Mm. So that's where you have to totally recreate your identity.
Yeah, you do.
I'll give you another example, which is a bit different, but as I said, I work with business owners who sell their companies. And a few of them, none of the ones I've worked with, but who I know, have killed themselves as soon as they've sold their companies, or certainly within the first 12 months.
Wow.
Bad, right?
Yeah.
I know a lot who have suffered big depression. And there are a few reasons why. So first and foremost is the goal that you've had for 30 years, you've suddenly achieved, so you've lost your purpose.
Yeah.
And people go, oh yeah, but you've got millions in the bank account. But the point is, like, everything that you identified as was your business.
Yeah.
And you've given it up. It's like giving up a kid.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you've got this idea that people are knocking on your door wanting to take money from you and invest in things. Then you've got, like, maybe all your friends that you had for years are in the business you no longer own.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone looks at you differently.
Yeah.
Right? So people go into deep depression. And it's kind of weird to say that, because, like, from the outside in, you would say, well, actually, you've just got everything you ever wanted. How could you feel like that? But when you understand how people work in psychology. So what I often have to say to people when I'm helping them with that outcome before it's happened is, you've got to plan your next act. So you have to create a bigger pull, a bigger kind of meaning or purpose beyond what's about to happen that drives you towards that next act for you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll sabotage what's going on. And so I think, and again, I can only comment based on that thought, like, so if a woman has been a mum for years and years and years, and they now want to kind of recreate something or create something new, they have to create a new identity.
Oh, I have a whole load of questions about that, which I can't go into because I've got to give you your day back at some point.
We could talk forever. Hopefully this is helpful for people.
It will be. Okay, so we've talked about how to get started. We've talked about the biggest mistakes people make. And I guess, is there anything, one particular thing, funding then? And I know this is a massive, massive issue, but what would, if you could give, 3, 4, 5 bits of advice about whatever scale your idea is, because everything always needs funding, doesn't it?
You can bootstrap ideas. It does depend. I mean, everything needs resources.
Yeah.
It's probably a better way of saying it, because funding sometimes just takes you down the route of capital raising and whatever else. But the way I look at it is, it's not actually about the funding, it's about the access to networks. So let me explain this a little bit. So if you think about what money really is, it's just value being exchanged, right? Mm-hmm. So the more value you put into the world, the more money you make generally, okay? So someone who solves a big problem, right, tends to get the money back. That's why you see the billionaires doing crazy things like Jeff Bezos and whatever else. My view is that if you wake up one morning, someone somewhere in the world has the resources you need, okay, but they may not have your idea.
Yes.
Okay? So your job is not to think about raising money. Your job is to find the person who has the resources.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's about the connections that come between those things. Because like someone who's got millions and millions of dollars in their bank account is not worried about money. They're worried about what idea can I put that money behind.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And it changes.
Well, how to keep that money, how to grow that money.
Yeah, it changes the psychology. So the job is to find the person or find the connection or the node into that person or that entity or that community. That's the job. The job is not to raise money. The job is to find the person who has the money who hasn't got the idea.
Yeah.
And that's the same. And you can take that concept.
A lot of people don't know how to get to that person, though, do they?
But that's where it's about network and connection.
Yeah. Okay. So that takes it back to you've got to put yourself in the right
environments.
spaces where those people exist and are about.
Yeah, you've got to because it's partnerships and things like that are underrated in terms of the ability to grow anything. Right? It's always going to be. That's why I keep saying like entrepreneurship being a team sport means it's not just your employees. It's everyone else around you. It's the whole thing. So you've got to be clear. If the goal is I need to have someone who has a partner with the capital resources to make my idea viable, you've got to then work out where that person is or where those people are, and then you need to get into those rooms. And you need to probably get into those rooms through other people that can connect you through those rooms, and then you're edified.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in terms of does every business need money? I mean, it depends. The thing about money in particular is that it can accelerate an idea, but at the same time it brings complexities like we talked about previously. So if you really value autonomy and you value control, bringing in financial investors, partners early, you are giving up autonomy and some control for that decision.
Yeah.
But sometimes a business model necessitates that. So tech businesses, SaaS businesses, all that. If you want to have more control and autonomy, you have the ability to bootstrap something, which is going to take longer because it means that you have to take whatever money you can make from an idea. You have to focus on profit. You have to focus on cash flow.
Yeah.
And it's not crazy for businesses. I'm working with a business locally to here at the moment, which has grown massively quickly. They're now doing millions of profit, never taken on any investment whatsoever. They just started off with a very simple idea. It started to work. They reinvested in that idea. Boom, boom, boom. They'll do £18 million next year and $6 million in profit.
Wow.
No investment.
And how long's their journey been?
6 years.
6 years.
First 2 or 3 years challenging, but profitable, so enough to sustain. And then it really, they didn't change the plan that much. They just got deeper into the plan, and then it really took off. So not every idea needs funding. Certain ideas absolutely need funding.
And to find that funding, you've got to find the people.
Got to find the people, and back to the Colonel Sanders thing we talked about beforehand around Kentucky Fried Chicken. How many doors you have to? Sometimes it might be 100 doors, 100 conversations or whatever it is that you have to kind of knock on or have.
But that is so tricky from a self-validation, because so much of what you've spoken about is about belief, self-belief, just sort of that will to keep going, don't stop, learn, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it is. I think for a lot of people, I think it's rarer to be obviously the Colonel Sanders, because it's the whole 1%, 99% thing, isn't it? It's rarer to be that, because the more it's like you get knocks, you get knocks, and it's just that wears away at you.
Yeah, but that's the psychology. So like one of my mentors said to me, he actually said this exact thing when I was starting the beginning of this business. He said, "I want you to go out and get 20 no's. I want 20 rejections." I'm like, what?
So you know what that feels like?
No, because he said every no is closest to a yes. So if you reframe it to say, "Oh, I'm not getting yeses," and that's your definition of success, you're going to be really disappointed. But if your definition of success is, "I'm going to go out and get no's," and I know that if I get 100 no's, I'm getting closer to a yes, and you reframe that, it changes the whole way you approach it.
I am dreading editing this, Nick. How the F am I going to edit this down?
I don't know.
Shit.
Do a part 1, part 2.
Part 3, 4.
I don't know how you do it, so I don't know. You can break it up. There's a lot in this. I mean, there's a lot in, because we've talked about mindset.
Well, and equally, the good thing is that actually I don't. One thought I did have when you were talking, I think, thank God he has his own podcast, because actually you can actually just go and listen to him. All of this stuff you put out there.
I have got it out there in different ways.
The
problem is it's hard to curate.
So I've got, obviously, I can edit this down as what's relevant for twerk, and then everything else people can just come to you for, because you're exactly.
There's a lot of stuff on the business. I mean, we talked a lot about how do you start something today. I think the balance between the mechanics of how you start something and maybe a little bit on the mindset is probably valuable, because I honestly believe that if people don't look at that part of the journey, and most people don't, right? Most people kind of think it's the mechanics of building a business or building a career, as you would call it, but they don't think about how they show up. Had I have maybe understood this stuff back in my corporate EMAP days, if I was doing the stuff I was doing now, I think it would have been a totally different experience. And I would have acted differently. Whether I would have stayed and progressed in that environment or not, but I would have, when someone was being, bullying and all the stuff that you experience sometimes, I would have totally been different. And I would have said, hey, listen, that's their, they're on their own journey. They're doing this because they've got their own issues. I wouldn't have thought of taking it personally.
I know.
So this stuff, I do think, regardless of whether someone's entrepreneurial or whether they just want to be better at their job, it's important to talk about.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to say thank you very much, Nick.
It's all right. Anytime.
If you would like to hear more about this chat, see some pics and read about how to get started in this industry and or this role, then please go to our website www.twerk.org. The link is in this podcast page and across our socials. Sincere thanks.